Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is the network marketing. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. It's not the network marketing. It is the wholesale real estate investing number 243 by SAHA. I'm Paul Romero and hanging out here from Phoenix, Arizona on a really awesome morning. Oh, I see a cloud. Wonder where that came from. Just a little guy, little teeny guy. Mostly a lot of sunshine and blue skies out there. And we're here today discussing, as we always do on New Op Day, how to win friends and influence people. It is the key to your success in wholesale real estate is how to deal with people. And so I want to say welcome to wholesale real estate investors of any kind, of course. Welcome, especially anyone who's interested in potentially doing wholesale real estate or real estate investing and wanting to learn how to start and work this business. Introducing our property noodler system. Anybody who has questions for us or would like to talk to us, there's the email right there. Send us an email. More than happy to converse and help people, and that's what we're all about here is training and education and helping people, not only in their situations with buying houses, but also in this side of the game and getting people, education in wholesale real estate. So as I said, this whole Dale Carnegie book here is the core of real estate. We live by one of the mantras that we live by is that real estate equals relationships, and it's so true because there's so many people. The relationships you build with a seller could help you potentially, land that deal. The relationships you have with professionals, with other people, other wholesalers, all those things are going to be key to your success in the real estate business. So where we are here in this book is we are on part 3. Chapter 4, and I'm just going to run through the 3 parts real quick once again. Part 1 is the fundamental techniques in handling people, which that is really the basics. I mean, if you just read part 1 of this book, it would make a huge difference for you. Part 2 is 6 ways to make people like you, and that's a pretty good thing because people always want to do business with people that they know, like, and trust, or at least people that they feel like they know, feel like they can trust, but like. Okay, they have to like you. Liking you is how you get them to feel like they know you and can trust you. If they don't like you, they're not going to feel like they know you, and it's because they don't feel like they know you, and they aren't going to trust you very much. And then part 3 is how to win people to your way of thinking. And I mean that, especially in dealing with sellers, you want to win them over into your way of thinking. Therefore, they can come to terms with a deal that you're putting together. If they're in their way of thinking, oftentimes their way of thinking won't create a deal. So, you want to create a deal out of this. Obviously, your way of thinking creates a deal out of this. So you need to win them over to your way of thinking. So it's very powerful stuff in how to win people over into your way of thinking. And there's certain more like what not to do's in the beginning of this chapter, the first 3 in this section. You can't win an argument is number 1. Number 2 is a sure way of making enemies and how to avoid it. I don't think that's going to win anybody over into your way of thinking as well either. Number 3, if you're wrong, admit it. Now this is a definitely a do. The first ones are do nots, and this one, a drop of honey, is also kind of more of a do than it is a do not. So a couple of don'ts there, and then we get into kind of the how to, the how to do this, how to win people over into your way of thinking. And chapter 4 here is called A Drop of Honey. Now, I'm going to kind of read from the book here today because there's a couple of things very awesome that I just want to share with you out of this chapter. He says, if your temper is aroused and you tell them a thing or two, you will have a fine time unloading your feelings. Okay, so if you're excited or upset or whatever, and you tell somebody a thing or two, it's going to make you feel good. But what about the other person? Will he share your pleasure? Will your belligerent tones, your hostile attitude make it easy for him to agree with you? Woodrow Wilson said, if you come at me with your fist doubles, I think I can promise you that mine will double as fast as yours. But if you come at me and say, let us sit down and take counsel together, and if we differ from each other, understand why it is that we differ, just what the points at issue are. We will presently find that we are not so far apart after all, and that the points on which we differ are few, and that the points on which we agree are many, and that if we only have the patience and the candor and the desire to get together, we will get together. So that's pretty strong right there. Let us sit down and take counsel together. If we differ from each other, understand why it is that we differ, and we will come to realize that we are not so far apart, and that the points that we differ are few, and the points that we are, in agreement upon are many. And if we just have the patience and the candor and the desire to get together, we will get together. That's pretty powerful in dealing with the seller right there. If you can get them to relax and say, all right, well, let's discuss. Yeah, we're not on the same page here right now, but why aren't we on the same page? Where's the difference between what you're looking at and what I'm looking at? And so if you could get a person to open up to that, just that idea of, hey, let's just look at where we're in two different places. Generally, I mean, in wholesale real estate especially, this is going to be a situation on price. Your price is going to be lower than their expectation. So how do you bridge that gap of getting them to, win them over to your way of thinking and coming down to your price? So if you start to look at it, excuse me, got a dry mouth this morning. If you start to look at it and can get them to at least agree to take a look at this, at least agree to give it a chance, at least agree to hearing why your offer is what your offer is, then you can start to point out some of the ways and some of the reasons why you're not so far apart. He goes in here to talk about John D. Rockefeller, and this is an awesome story here because he was in the midst of a huge strike in Colorado for the miners. And I mean, it was talking about here that there was bloodshed. The strikers had been shot. Property had been destroyed. Troops had been called out. I mean, this thing was, violent. This was a huge, nasty strike, and people wanted to, string Rockefeller up from the nearest tree. I mean, they had built a huge hatred for him, and so it says in here that he gave this little speech that, in its entirety and its in its entirety is a masterpiece. It produced astonishing results. It calmed the tempestuous waves of hate that threatened to engulf Rockefeller. It won him a host of admirers, and it presents facts in such a friendly manner that the strikers went back to work without saying another word about the increase in wages for which they had fought so violently for. The opening of this remarkable speech is follows. He wants you to take note as how it glows with friendliness. He says, Rockefeller was talking to men who a few days ago wanted to hang him, yet he couldn't have been more gracious, more friendly, and if he addressed a group of medical missionaries. His speech was radiant with such phrases as, I am proud to be here, having visited in your homes, met many of your wives and children. We meet here not as strangers, but as friends, spirit of mutual friendship, our common interests. It is only by your courtesy that I am here. So all of these things that, changed the way people were looking at him and thinking about him. So here is the speech. I'm going to read the speech in its entirety here. He says, he got it before. These were the leaders of the revolt, so to speak. And he had taken the time prior to just walking in here to actually come in behind the scenes, go one-on-one with these people, sit down with them in their homes and their families and talk about things and et cetera and so on, and get to know these people. So he says, this is a red letter day in my life. It is the first time I have ever had the good fortune to meet the representatives of the employees of this great company, its officers and superintendents together, and I can assure you that I am proud to be here, and that I shall remember this gathering as long as I live. Had this meeting been held 2 weeks ago, I should have stood here a stranger to most of you, recognizing new faces. Having had the opportunity last week of visiting all the camps in the southern coal field and of talking individually with practically all of the representatives except those who were away, having visited in your homes, met many of your wives and children, we meet here not as strangers, but as friends. And it is in that spirit of mutual friendship that I am glad to have this opportunity to discuss with you our common interests. Since this is a meeting of the officers of the company and the representatives of the employees, it is only by your courtesy that I am here, for I am not so fortunate as to be one or the other, and yet I feel that I am intimately associated with you men, for in a sense, I represent both the stockholders and the directors. I mean, that's a pretty superb example there of the fine art of making friends out of enemies. He says, suppose Rockefeller had taken a different tack. Suppose he had argued with those miners and hurled devastating facts in their faces. Suppose he had told them by his tones and insinuations that they were wrong. Suppose that, by all the rules of logic, he had proved that they were wrong. What would have happened? More anger would have been stirred up, more hatred, and more revolt. So, going back to the first couple of chapters here in this part 3, where it says you cannot win an argument, sure ways of making enemies and how to avoid it, which comes down to, don't tell the other person that they are wrong and admit when you are wrong. I mean, he did all those things right there in this little speech, and got these miners, these representatives of the company, the representatives of the employees, to realize that they had common interests and they had common goals, and that he was on their side basically, and the directors and the board members all wanted this thing to work. And by meeting with the people and taking the time to get to know them, they got to know him, and he was able to deliver such a speech in a manner that opened him up to the idea of, hey, let's all get together and make this work. So there's the big thing. When you're in front of a seller, when you're making an offer that is, too low for them to accept at the moment, looking at now changing the tide a little bit in getting to know them and getting to know their situation and getting to know their wants and needs, you can, through that process, win them over into at least understanding why it is that you're offering what you're offering, and then come to terms with the fact that, okay, we're offering this for these reasons, you're looking at getting this much for those reasons, we have a difference of this much right now. There's got to be some common ground here in between where we can make this work for both of us. And obviously, we always go in offering less than what we can actually pay, because we're always obviously looking for that instant yes and a really great deal, hitting that home run, so to speak. But we don't always get it. In fact, rarely do we ever get it. So the fact that you've come in low to begin with positions yourself to make some adjustments. You never want to come in with your, this is what I can get for this property at the high end of the deal, because now if your seller has expectations higher, you've got to bring them all the way to your side. It's a whole lot easier to get them to give just a little bit if you're willing to also give just a little bit. So meeting in the middle, is kind of what you're hoping to achieve here. So when you're looking at preparing your offers, first of all, you need to know what is your sort of what they call your maximum allowable offer, so that you know what it is that you can go up to, and you can still have a deal here, and you can still turn around and flip this property and make some money. But you also want to make sure that you have the ability to enter into a negotiation. That's the key ticket right there. If you come in with an offer and that's it, you stick to it, take it or leave it kind of a thing, and you're not willing to enter into a negotiation, and you're just gonna try to get that person to come to their senses, so to speak, and open their eyes to why your offer is what it is, and that's all you can do, and yada yada yada. There's a much lesser chance of you ever getting that deal than even giving them a lower offer to begin with, as long as you've got some room to negotiate, and your objective here is to, number one, get them entered into a negotiation. That's the powerful thing there. Now, obviously, if your offer is, quite low and their expectation is quite high, you could be pretty far apart. And that low offer could be very off-putting to them instantaneously, so much so that they're like, oh, no, forget it. That's it. Get the hell out of here, kind of a thing. And you want to try to, win them into engaging into a negotiation. And that could be a tough thing. When you're really far apart, it can be a real tough thing if if your offer is sort of offensive to them. But you just need to make that statement that's going to get them to open up to, well, let's discuss it. And a good thing, a good way to make that presentation, especially if you've made an offer, if you're making an offer on a house that you really haven't seen yet, that you really don't know anything about yet. If you're at the property with the person, obviously you're going to have to take a different approach. But if you haven't seen the property yet, I mean, a very simple statement that says, well, listen, I can understand your thinking, but I just want you to understand that, I'm looking at this from the absolute worst case scenario here. I haven't actually seen the property yet. I don't know what kind of condition that it really is in. So I'm just starting out here from the absolute worst possible scenario, in that, and depending on what kind of property is that you're going at, let's just happen to say that you're going after a vacant property, and maybe it's boarded up, right? So you can, obviously you've got potential there for huge problems. I mean, you don't know if this property was at some point in time in the past vandalized and stripped of all its plumbing and wiring, et cetera, and so on. So you can use that obviously to your huge advantage by saying something along those lines that, hey, listen, I just want you to understand that I'm coming at this from, an absolute worst case scenario point of view. I haven't seen that property yet. I don't know what's going on the inside of that property. I don't know if there's plumbing and electrical that's been stripped out of that thing, if the air conditioning unit has been gutted, all of those things. If for some reason that's the case and I've got to do everything to this property, then that's kind of where I'm at with my price. But if we can take a look at the property and I can see that there's more there, obviously I'd be able to make you, offer you more money for it. So with that in mind, what is it that you really need to get out of it? What is it that you think you really need here? Or a good question is at that point in time. So with that in mind, what do you think the least amount that you could live with really is here? Just try to bridge that gap a little bit. Okay, you've stated, you're not putting out a number, you're just stating that I can come up. So you've opened them up right there by stating that I can come up. I could potentially come up. If I need, I need to see the property, I need to see what's going on there. I need to really evaluate the condition and find out how much work it needs, et cetera, and so on. And I can bring my offer up if I find good things. And if I find good things and I can bring my offer up, what do you think is the least amount that you could live with on this property? What could you come down to just to make that happen? That's a real good question for it. So the whole idea of opening with friendliness when making an offer on a property is going to give you a lot more opportunity to get a deal than if you are, sort of that cold shoulder guy who just comes in with his offer. He's worked his numbers out to the T. He knows, I'm making you the best possible offer you're ever going to receive because, I've done the numbers and this is where it's at. And, nobody's going to pay more for this because they have to put X amount of dollars in it, yada, yada, yada. And of course, a guy's got to be able to put money in it and fix it up and make money from it. I mean, this is a business that we run. I mean, even just all these sorts of things. I mean, very, 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 pertinent, real, and powerful points that, I've done the numbers. This is where it is. This is the maximum that anybody can pay for it. And I'm willing to offer that to you. And, you got to understand that, this is a business and people need to, make a dollar for themselves as well, too, at the end of the day, and all these kinds of things. You might be proving the point that your offer is a good offer, but you're not giving. You're not allowing to open up a negotiation by giving a friendly approach that could, allow for that give and take that could soften them up and get them to be willing themselves to come down. All these great points. Hey, well, great. I don't care that you have a business. I don't care that you have to make money. I don't care that, all of those things. They don't care. At this point in time, it's all about, well, you know what, that's just not enough. So big, powerful stuff in how to make that approach to people. One of the things here that he follows this up with is, he says here, if a man's heart is rankling with discord and ill feeling towards you, you can't win him to your way of thinking with all the logic in Christendom. Scolding parents and domineering bosses and husbands and nagging wives ought to realize that people don't want to change their minds. They can't be forced or driven to agree with you or me, but they may possibly be led to if we are gentle and friendly, ever so gentle and ever so friendly. He said Lincoln said that over 100 years ago in these words: it is an old and true maxim that a drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall. So with men, if you would win a man to your cause, first convince him that you are his sincere friend. Therein is the drop of honey that catches his heart, which, say what you will, is the great high road to reason. A drop of honey to capture their heart to get them to like you, to feel like they know you, to believe that they can trust you, is the great high road to reason. You cannot just make somebody, you cannot force them or drive them to agree with you. It's that approach that, and here again, it goes into something that has to do with sales as well too. In the world of sales, there's what's called, you know, driven, driving sales, push selling, where, you are just there giving the information. You're relentless. I'm not leaving here till you're buying. You need this. This is why you need this. Here's all the benefits of this. All of these things, just push, 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 push. I'm bombarding you with all the information that you need to say yes, except for one thing. You're not giving them the ability to reason it out, to reason out a way to buy, to give themselves a feeling of, what's the word I'm looking for? To give themselves the feeling that they are doing the responsible thing, that by purchasing, they're making a reasonable, a justifiable, a responsible purchase. That's one of the things we talk a lot about here is sort of the new age, the new world economy that, after this crash of 2008, 9, 8, 9, 10, 11, etc., after this crash and this big depression that we've been through, the mindset of people, both in purchasing and also in, selling real estate here, it's changed. And there's a fallout from that. There's a fallout from that, from the recession in this mindset. Because think about it, all the money didn't go away. It went away from a lot of people, but there's still a lot of people that didn't have themselves positioned in a place to be devastated by the crash. And so you're on the street, on the block in the neighborhood where there was, 3 empty houses, 5 more people in trouble, and 2 people that didn't get, I mean, sure, they got hurt by it, they lost money, but they still have lots of money. It's like, you got the guy who makes $50,000 a year, whose 401k has, been devastated, and his future retirement is gone, and he can't make his mortgage payments because he's lost his job. And versus the guy who still has his job, the guy on the same block who earns, $250,000 a year, who now, is only earning, $200 or $175,000 a year, $150,000 a year, because, his business and his work and his earning power has shrunk because there's less buyers, but he's still got plenty of money here. Right? So you're looking at 2 different people here, 2 different mindsets now, right? The guy who's got the money says, hey, you know what? I want to remodel the kitchen. But if we remodel the kitchen, and we invite Joe and Sally over, Joe just lost his job. Joe can't remodel his kitchen. And, he probably needs a kitchen worse than we do. What are we going to look like? That's kind of where people's mindset went in all this. The people who still had the money, what are we going to look like? How are we going to be perceived? That we're, flaunting our money in their faces now, and I mean, we invite Joe and Tom and Susie down the street, who, they're only a month away from foreclosure. They're going to lose, if they come over, they see we're putting in a new kitchen, they're our friends now. They've been our friends for years, but what are they going to think, about us flaunting our money and putting, putting in a new kitchen in the face of all this disaster that everybody's going through. So there was this whole shift of mindset of, what are other people going to think about me for the fact that I have money? And with that, the fallout of that is that people need much more of a value-driven, responsible way to spend their money. They have to be able to feel good that they're making a solid decision in spending their money. And this too goes with people who are selling their house. They need to feel good that they're making a solid decision in selling this property. There's, the value has risen to the top as one of the most important things. So the value that somebody needs to get out of this house is a very important thing. So it's real powerful that you're able to get into the value discussion with people. And then you can start discerning the differences in the value between where you're at and where they're at. There's a lot more to this chapter, guys. That's just the beginning. There's a couple more little stories in here I'd really like to read to and discuss a little bit about. But you see how this winning people over into your way of thinking, this part 3 of this book in its entirety, is a really powerful tool to add to your arsenal in building success in your wholesale real estate business. Because like I said, real estate is relationships and building relationships and being able to, because when you're dealing with sellers, you got to build relationships quickly. First impressions mean a lot. And if you lose that right out of the gate, it's going to be hard to get it back and be able to, make a deal out of a potential situation. So with that, we're going to end today, as we always do, with the Napoleon Hill prayer that goes, "O universe, I ask not for more riches, but for more wisdom with which to make better use of the riches you've given me at birth, consisting of the power to control and direct my own mind to whatever end I might desire." Everybody make it a great new up day. So glad you could be here. Again, communicate with us at propertynoodlers@gmail.com. We're happy to hear from you. And get out there and make it a great day and a great session. We'll see you back here on Wisdom Wednesday.